His mind torn between his faith and love for Ineska, Kristoff stumbles the streets at night. His triumph over a vampire that gained him the adulation of the citizens of Prague have also drawn the attention of Ozra's kin, who seek to turn the Crusader into one of their own. A veiled woman, seemingly part of a rival group of vampires, subdues Kristoff. His faith shaken, he is unable to fight off this new vampire's powers and awakens anew as a creature of darkness.
Thou needs must pledge fealty to thy new mistress.
I am newly remade and know little of this world. I agree only to follow thy lead for the present.
Such rebelliousness is unseemly in a Bruja. I do not like such willfulness in my childer.
He displays as much fealty as can be expected from such a one, Ekaterina.
Very well, Cosmas. Then thou may hold his leash. We shall see if he takes instruction with more deference. Kristoff, thou must understand that our enemies are legion, and none more vile than Clan Zamitzi, which infests Prague like a plague. The fiends seek thy death in payment for the slaying of Ozra and her Shlachta servitors. If thou art to survive, thou must quickly master the powers of thy blood. Thou must pay heed to all our laws, or thou wilt become a gibbering monster like the Zamitzi. Our first law...
Mistress Ekaterina, I crave thy indulgence. Kristoff is a man of action. His learning shall be the greater on the field of battle than the parlors of the Prometheans. Let me take him on my mission to Garanal's Haven, where he may learn our ways firsthand. I could use a stout broadsword protecting my back.
Kristoff is not yet ready.
Verily, he is as ready as he shall ever be.
I would have thy counsel, Cosmas.
Kristoff is no Bruja philosopher. His hot blood cools too much when he has no mission and curdles. Send him forth. If he survives, he will have mastered our ways.
Very well. Kristoff, go thou with Wilhelm Stryker. Trust what he says if thou wouldst outlive the night. Go, my swordsman, and strike deep into the lair of our dear ally, Garanal the Cappadocian.
Time to cut thy teeth, fledgling.
It's interesting to note that Ekaterina the Wise is actually a canon character from World of Darkness sourcebooks.
Ekaterina is a scholar, not a warrior born. She would keep her fledgling studying vampire lore in her nest till Gehenna comes, and never hurl them from the nest to test their wings. But I cannot spend hours debating Cainite wisdom in a university. Give me a stout broadsword in my hand and the sweet taste of my foe's blood on my tongue, and I have all the wisdom I need. And I suspect thou art akin to me.
I am not akin to thee, blood guzzler. I strike only those that deserve my steel. I do not murder the innocents to gorge on their blood.
Thou shalt feed upon blood, or thou shalt die. But thou need not kill to do so. Drink only so much blood as will sustain thee. Suffer thy prey to live on, for to kill during the feeding is to violate our Promethean ethic. And that way lies the beast.
The beast?
A beast born of Cain's sin doth coil within thy breast, Kristoff. Keep it at bay, or be lost forever. Acts of cruelty unleash that beast, until it rules thee, as it rules many of Azra's kin.
The beast made them madmen?
Nay, the mad vampires are called Malkavian. Shouldst thou meet one, God help thee. Shouldst thou need his assistance, God cannot help thee. Nay, the beast is not mere madness, but demonic possession by the curse of Cain. We Prometheans are wayfarers in the land of the beast, but we stray not from the road of humanity, the Via Humanitas. By our acts of compassion are we saved from the jaws of the beast. Remember this always, or be devoured from within. Thou hast life everlasting, so long as thou keepest thy pallid flesh hidden from the sun's hateful rays. The life-giving sun only brings death to the likes of us. Each day we must retreat to our haven in the chambers below the university.
Okay, so that was a lot of exposition. I'll leave it to the game to explain some of it further, but obviously being a vampire now has some major effects on how the game is played. We now have access to havens, which are areas we can rest and allocate our experience points. The generic NPCs that walk the streets of Prague now appear as hostile when we mouse over them. Well, they won't attack us without provocation, so it's more like we are hostile to them. As such, this bar here becomes important. These buttons set a character's attitude in combat, much like AI patterns in an RTS game. The left icon is defensive, causing the character to only attack when attacked. The middle is neutral, causing them to only attack when the party is in combat, and the right is aggressive, causing them to attack anything in range. And yes, if we set it to that, while in town, Noble Kristoff will go around murdering everyone that's in sight, so it's best to leave it on neutral as defensive for now. The big button below that is the regroup button, which will cause all our party members to convene on our currently selected character should we have separated them prior. Wilhelm makes mention of the Beast, which is both a major factor in vampire lore and a gameplay mechanic. We now have 3 bars underneath our characters, which, yes, we control multiple characters in this game, but more on that later. The first blue bar is our health, just like before. Below that is our blood pool, which is red, of course. Below that, which you can't see right now because it's empty, is our frenzy bar. This will fill up in yellow as vampires take damage or other factors that we'll run into. If it fills all the way to the top, characters will frenzy, gaining a boost in physical attributes but losing complete control. They'll attack anything and everyone for the duration of the frenzy, including allies. More on what this means in lore later. If you're wondering what we're doing right now, instead of heading to Judith Bridge, we're trying to get an NPC to spawn in Old Town by going in and out of the inn. The bartender won't talk to us anymore. I don't want to be a vampire. The NPC in question is Labusa, a cryptic ghoul that's been abandoned on the streets of Prague. She isn't necessary to talk to, but she reveals a lot about Tzimisces that I find interesting.
He hath taken me. He hath taken the best of me and left nothing but a shell. In his home of bone, in his halls of skin, behind his walls of flesh, he hath taken all I had. I walked, and under my feet the floor did quiver. I looked, and beheld that I trod upon the bloated belly of one even more wretched than I. Once I had the faith of an innocent. He did ravage me, and took my faith away into his cathedral of flesh, where the soft and dripping walls swallow all sound, even the sound of my screams. It fed him, and he grows like gel sacks of rot on decaying wood. He grows. He will awaken soon. My innocent faith fed him and made him stronger. Soon he will be strong enough to awaken and defile the purity of the world as he defiled me. My soul is beyond all salvation, and soon all souls will be damned as well.
The things she's describing that aren't foreshadowing at all describe the lair of the Tzimisces, a specific kind of vampire. I kind of assume you already know a bit about vampire lore if you're watching this video, but if you don't know about vampire clans and bloodlines, the game will have you covered soon and I'll fill in any gaps. For now though, I'd just like to point out how much I like Labusa's dialogue here, even if the delivery could have used some work. I like it when the Tzimisces are portrayed as straight up alien monsters, fully giving up their humanity while not succumbing to the beast, but instead changing into something perhaps far more sinister. Speaking of clans, this game pronounces it Bruja. I say Bruja, Bloodline says Bruja. I don't know what the official pronunciation is, so no matter what you hear, just calm down, breathe. It's Bruja, it's the same thing. We head to Judith Bridge, where Kristoff starts to get hungry.
I grow faint.
The hunger overcomes thee. The beast strengthens as thou weaken from lack of blood. Canst thou feel him uncoiling in thy heart? Thou must feed.
Feed or die, Kristoff, for I shall kill thee before I let the beast claim thee.
Now this can be a frustrating part for a first-time player, as the game never actually tells you how to feed. For that, we need to open our Discipline page. Here we'll find all our new vampiric abilities and powers, one of which allows us to feed and gain blood from suitable targets. We can have 6 of these abilities on our quick bar here, with the currently selected appearing here. By right-clicking, we can activate the selected ability. In this case, well, sorry old man, but you in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Only what thou needs, Kristoff, no more. Behold, his wound vanishes. Monsieur shouldn't drink so much wine, eh, Kristoff? Do not worry, he'll wake up and know nothing of what has happened. Most mortals find great pleasure in the dark kiss. Ekaterina tells us that in Carthage, the mortals happily submitted to it.
After we suck the old man, we head towards the monastery.
These powers tempt me to dark acts. How easily could I rain devastation on all who vex me?
Thy fear and thy power conspire to make of thee a beast. Seek thee an anchor for thy humanity, a rock to cling to when storms come.
Anezka.
Love for a mortal is the most dangerous of all anchors.
I must see Anezka.
That is most unwise. The cheerful world of daylight is lost to thee.
I must see her again, just to look upon her for a moment.
Ekaterina would not be pleased. Oh, very well. Shouldst thou display valor on our mission this night, I shall take thee to the convent, but only for a moment to glimpse her as she sleeps. Now come, our mission lies ahead.
Wilhelm is describing the humanity system I talked about earlier. In addition to certain dialogue choices, we will lose humanity should we kill an innocent human during feeding or otherwise. It's a lot easier to lose humanity than it is to gain it, so we have to be careful not to drain them dry.
Behold Petrin Hill Monastery, haven of the Cappadocian vampires in Prague.
The monks are vampires?
Nay, the Cappadocians lurk in the desecrated crypts below the monastery, out of sight of the monks who provide them with fresh blood. Only those monks that serve Garanal know the real master of the monastery.
In order to get inside the monastery, we have to go to a side entrance, but not before we have a little snack.
What is our mission?
A mission of misfortune. Wise and noble Garanal is friend and ally to Ekaterina. I take no pleasure in storming his home, but Ekaterina has divined that the Cappadocians have stolen from her. We seek to retrieve a precious fragment of the Book of Nod, the wisdom of the ancient Canaanites.
Why would Garanal steal from her?
We know not. Until we learn all, we cannot let them know we serve Ekaterina.
So, before we go searching for this page from the Book of Nod, we'll go over the rest of the basics for this game's systems. First off, I only covered the 3 physical attributes in our last lesson because, well, we weren't going to use the others until we got access to disciplines. Many disciplines that we'll gain access to will require a certain amount of points to be in 1 or 2 of the following attributes, and raising some of them will increase the success rates or effectiveness of certain disciplines. Charisma only serves this function, though the discipline it affects, Presence, is perhaps the strongest in the entire game, which we'll get to later. Manipulation is needed for 2 discipline trees, Animalism and Dominate. For those aficionados out there, I believe it also affects Dementation, but you can't actually use any Dementation in the single player, go figure. It also affects shop prices. The higher our manipulation, the lower prices will be for things we buy, and the higher they'll be for things we sell. Appearance also affects presence, though to a lesser degree than charisma. It's worth noting that you can raise appearance by wearing pieces of jewelry, making it not all that desirable of an attribute to put points in. Intelligence is required to learn the more magic-oriented disciplines such as thaumaturgy. It isn't really needed if you aren't going to use them, but there are a lot of useful abilities that can be gained from it, so it's good to have at least one party member focusing on intelligence. Perception is required for a few protean abilities, but it affects the Auspex discipline far more. It does nothing other than that, since our chance to hit is related to our dexterity. Finally, Wits is perhaps the most useful attribute of these 6 in a general sense, as it affects a large amount of disciplines with the additional effect of making it harder for a character to frenzy. It also, strangely enough, makes successfully feeding in combat easier, which can be a very useful tactic. Now that we know how characters are made, let's get more into the ones we have access to and their disciplines. The word discipline refers to a set of abilities that fall under the same category rather than a single power, though there are some that only do one thing. Vampires come into the world of darkness knowing the 3 disciplines of their bloodline, though they do have the capacity to learn others. In lore, this requires a copious amount of study and drinking the blood of another vampire who knows the discipline they're trying to learn, but it's much easier in Redemption. Every vampire has access to some core abilities, however. Blood healing is perhaps the most important in the game, as it allows you to heal. All those healing salves we collected are now useless to us as vampires, making this ability our only means of healing any damage taken. Blood fuels every discipline we use, making managing this resource a major part of the game. We'll have to make sure that we use just the right amount of blood to win a fight and still have enough left to heal up any damage we take. We'll get that blood back by using the Feed ability. By using this on any target with blood, yes, including other vampires and including our own party members, we have a chance to grapple them and begin feeding. Against unsuspecting or incapacitated targets, this will work every time, but if they're hostile to us and actively fighting, it does have a chance to fail. Furthermore, feeding in combat immobilizes both the victim and the feeder, and it takes quite a while to fully drain most enemies. Killing an enemy by feeding does not lower humanity like feeding on an innocent does. All vampires are able to expend blood to increase their physical attributes. Using blood strength, blood stamina, or blood dexterity will raise these respective attributes depending on how leveled up those abilities are. Finally, Redemption adds 2 generic abilities unique to it in Walk the Abyss and Awaken. Walk the Abyss creates a portal that takes you back to your haven. Think of it like a Scroll of Town portal. Awaken allows a vampire to resurrect a target. Yes, target, not just ally. You can raise some enemies, and yes, they do give full experience and chances for loot. It's a grind, but you can break the game this way. Christoph Romuald is the game's main character, though his starting stats are fairly lackluster. His true strength lies in his versatility, as throughout the game he can gain access to an absurd amount of disciplines. We'll get to those in time though, so for now we'll go over the ones we begin with. Christoph is a Brujah, and thus has access to 3 specific disciplines all Brujah can learn. He begins with 1 point in each. Potence is a very simple discipline. This takes blood strength a step further, giving a vampire the potential for godly strength. In-game, this translates to a flat increase in melee damage, either with fists or with melee weapons. If you're looking to hit things really hard, Potence is the best way to do that. Celerity is in many ways a complement to Potence, as it increases a vampire's speed in much the same way. In-game, this allows a character to move and attack faster, making it useful in combat and just in getting around. Presence can be a bit harder to understand for people new to Vampire, but it's meant to represent the allure many vampires in fiction exude. A supernatural charisma, something about them that draws the eyes and ears to their, well, presence. Unlike Potence and Celerity, Presence grants a new ability for each point put into it. Awe is the first one, and, well, to be frank, it's the most broken ability in the game. Genuinely, for the most part, you don't need anything other than Awe and the charisma to support it. Awe makes any enemy it affects stare at the vampire using it in awe. This makes them walk toward the user for the duration, making feeding on them or dealing with unaffected enemies much easier. Dread Gaze does the opposite of Awe. Instead of being drawn to the vampire, Dread Gaze makes targets deathly afraid. This can get enemies out of the way, but since they run away from our characters, it can also make them run into other enemies, which typically will just make fights harder. Entrancement causes the target to become essentially charmed, switching sides. It requires appearance, and entranced enemies don't give experience when killed, so it has a more specific use than Awe, but can still be a big help in certain fights. Finally, Majesty is the final ability in Presence, and it acts as an AoE Awe. It requires a good amount of appearance, but once you have access to it, there's basically no reason not to use it in every fight, since you can just feed on any affected enemies to recoup the blood cost. I'm going to be fairly boring with my build for Kristoff this playthrough, and go with generally the most optimal way to play him, and that is, of course, heavy on the Presence. Otherwise, we'll likely be pumping Dexterity once we reach the Charisma and Appearance requirements, so we can actually hit enemies we don't dazzle with our sexy Crusader bod. Wilhelm, as we'll see soon, is kind of a beast. He starts with a lot of strength, a good weapon, and a good extra ability that just lets him chunk people. Being a Brujah, he starts with the ability to learn the same disciplines as Kristoff, but strangely enough, when we gain control of him, he has two abilities from the Protean discipline. Protean is not a natural Brujah discipline, and is in fact the signature discipline of another clan we'll run into later. Protean is the ability to draw out the feral side of vampires, to not succumb to the beast but to harness it for a period of time. Regardless of how Wilhelm has it, it's very useful, especially here in the early game. Eyes of the Beast is a utility ability that basically acts as a brightness slider. It turns the user into a kind of walking light source, alleviating some of the game's moodier lighting, let's say. Feral Claws is really the meat of this discipline. Using it allows the vampire to grow deadly claws that replace their currently equipped weapon. These claws are fast and deal a lot of damage, mostly because they deal aggravated damage that allows them to bypass a lot of supernatural enemies' defenses. Earth Meld is an interesting power. The vampire becomes one with the earth beneath them, becoming invincible and regenerating health for the duration. It's honestly not all that useful, since for the most part taking a party member out of action is just going to get the others killed, but it's neat. Shape of the Beast allows a vampire to transform into a wolf. The wolf attacks and moves faster than a vampire with feral claws activated, but doesn't scale nearly as well as the claws do. Like Earth Meld, this ability is really outshone by the claws, but it's still neat. Finally, Form of Mist turns the vampire into mist, which in this game is basically pointless. It's meant to be a scouting ability, as being mist makes you undetectable, but there's really no need for it. You can just look ahead. It's not that hard. Oh, okay. Like I said, we don't need these healing salves anymore, but we'll keep them for now so we can sell them later. In a room featuring two monks, we find some gold and a scroll of blood stamina. Scrolls are... hold on, apparently Wilhelm was hungry. Scrolls are essentially disciplines in a single-use form. If we use this scroll, for example, whoever uses it will gain increased stamina for a while and the scroll will disappear. Our main enemies here in the monastery will simply be Cappadocian vampires. Being vampires, they're certainly a step up from the Schlachta and rats, though we're, in the story anyway, much more capable against them now that we're vampires ourselves. They can hit pretty hard, but can also be hit pretty hard, especially by Wilhelm, who has a good chance of just chunking them. Chunking, by the way, is kind of a gameplay mechanic. I don't really know what it's officially called, but I call it chunking. I guess critical hits makes more sense, though that seems to be a separate mechanic in relation to dagger-type weapons. I don't know. Regardless, sometimes we'll hit characters really hard and chunks of them will go flying. This won't always kill them, but will often lop off a limb and make them flee. You might notice Wilhelm has new duds, and that's because we gave him some leather armor. Armor appearance isn't unique to the armor equipped. Characters just have armored and not armored appearances.
The Cappadocians are a strange clan, Kristoff. They seek to understand death and the secrets of the grave. Prepare thyself. Their halls are guarded by the walking dead.
The stench of death taints this holy place.
'Tis fitting for the clan of death.
By hitting tab, we can switch which character we control, so why not take Wilhelm and his claws out for a try. Cappadocians will use a power called Aura Perception on us, which puts swirlies on our heads and shows them our stats. I don't know why they're doing this. It might be the Age of Redemption mod, but obviously this is useless for an NPC. So we get swirlies. Among the Cappadocians, we'll fight their undead minions, skeletons and zombies. The zombies are resilient, but not that much a problem. The skeletons, however, are resistant to everything but bashing damage and will sometimes have bows. And sometimes these bows will shoot fire arrows. Fire to a vampire is, well, it's not good. Very much not good, but thankfully we found some Scrolls of Awaken. These invaluable scrolls will let us resurrect fallen party members. We just drag the scroll over their head on the bottom, right-click, and voila, alive again. Or undead again. Awaken is not an actual thing in vampire lore and is entirely a gameplay consideration unique to Redemption. That said, we are not actually resurrecting our party members back from the dead, the final dead, I should say. When characters quote-unquote die, they're actually going into torpor, which is a death-like sleep vampires can enter for various reasons, but being nearly destroyed is one of them. Just a neat fact. We got a new hat for Kristoff. We got a nice little pointy hat! We take our pointy hats and look at this pretty painting.
Behold, the mural depicts Cain as God's favored son. Every child knows that Cain's sacrifice of grain vexed the Lord, and Abel's sacrifice of the blood of a lamb satisfied the Lord. But mysterious old Cainites tell us that the Lord craved blood and reveled in Cain's second sacrifice, the blood of his brother Abel. The Lord raised up Cain over the other sons of Adam. He freed him from plowing the earth for food and set a mark on him that he live forever. Garanal devoutly believes this Cainite heresy, which holds that the curse of Cain is truly a blessing.
And thou, dost thou believe the Cainite heresy?
If I am favored of the Lord, the angels have not seen fit to tell me of it.
These red vials are vials of vitae, and they're essentially going to replace healing salves, so they're far more versatile. Instead of replenishing health, these replenish blood, which we can use to heal ourselves, but obviously it'll power our other disciplines as well. You may have noticed the decor of the Cappadocians is, well, Wilhelm was right in calling them the Clan of Death. Believe it or not, most of the work Cappadocians do are some of the more innocuous ways vampires investigate vampire and human conditions. At least, when the Cappadocians get their hands on you, you're already dead. A lot of items here are kind of hidden in neat little corners or on shelves. It's a nice little surprise when you find some gold or a hidden ring. Next to a Scroll of Awaken, we find a lever, which we of course pull. This opens a gate that was barring our path before. Combat in these small laboratories can be pretty annoying, as the camera doesn't always cooperate with the geometry and it's easy for the AI to get stuck. This is where letting Wilhelm use the halberd he started with is quite useful, as it gives him more range on his attacks and he can attack through Kristoff. Anyway, we find another lever, which opens another gate, which we go through.
Thou dost fight thy allies with great zeal, Wilhelm.
I take no pleasure in it. I just do what must be done. The only one I will not fight is Garanal, the leader of the Cappadocians. I chose to strike this night because Garanal and his assistant Serena have an audience with the Cainite Prince of Prague, Rudolf Brandl, and will not be here.
The monastery isn't as extensive as the mines, but there are a couple of side areas that have a little bit of loot, mostly gold, but it's good to stock up on bottles of vitae where we can find them. We find a dagger, which allows us to deal critical damage against debilitated opponents. Not that useful against the enemies we're facing now, but will be useful later on. Also, just putting this out there, this game has no quick save. I wish it did, though. Past this asshole of a skeleton with his asshole fire arrows made of asshole, we find an entrance to further into the monastery.
More dark worship. Is there no end to the vampiric taste for blasphemy?
Garanal celebrates the transfiguration of death, but I do not share his fondness for the grave. I have died once to become a Cainite, and do not seek to die again.
I appreciate that it takes off our silly helmet for the cutscenes, thank you. The cathedral has a treasure chest, though we only got a single bottle of Vitae out of it. Also, don't touch it! It burns! Fire is not good for vampires, Kristoff. You gotta learn this, buddy. You fight our way through a couple more Cappadocians until, oh, Wilhelm, you get your own pointy hat now, yeah! The pointy hat squad is unbeatable, so we venture forth through the Cappadocian lair.
An earthen floor blankets this room.
Aye, the Cappadocians do bury their newly embraced in a ritual of death.
There are a lot of Cappadocians here and more spring up out of the graves. Like Wilhelm said, they bury their newly embraced, forcing them to crawl out of their graves. Mostly a symbolic gesture, but it certainly would also make clear to the new vampire just what the Cappadocians are all about. Cappadocians also just like to bury themselves in graves and sleep there, or just be there because that's how they feel, that's what they like. They're all about the dead stuff. Past the graves, we find a spiked mace, which would be useful against the skeletons if it did bashing damage, but I guess since it has spikes, it only does lethal. We also find a lever, which opens another gate, but we haven't seen it yet. There it is. The Door of Skulls will lead us to our next level of the monastery, but a lot of zombies bar our path. There is a side path before the door, however, that leads to some treasure. Our loot is some gold, a bottle of Vitae, a scroll of Walk the Abyss, and a femur? Now, this is a weapon, and spoiler alert, it's a pretty good one, but currently it's unidentified. This has no basis in the vampire tabletop games, it's literally just here because that's what Diablo did. We can't identify it right now, so we just take it with us. Monastery 3 is where things start to get a bit more labyrinthy, so it might be a bit hard to get the layout of the map, but it's not nearly as big as it seems. There are a lot of chests and side areas here, and luckily in one we find a scroll of Spirit's Touch. And then... fire. Spirit's Touch is a power from the Auspex discipline that lets us identify items. We use it on the femur to learn its properties. See, this ain't a regular femur, it's the femur of an Elder Zamisi. That's how you know it's good. It deals bashing damage, which is good for skeletons, but also deals extra damage to vampires. I don't know how much this extra damage is, but it works real good and it's really fast, so we use it to hit people with. Eventually, we find a door guarded by Cappadocians. You just see one here, but there were a couple before we boned them.
'Tis Garanol's study. Now to find the key that unlocks the secrets of the dead.
Well, we need a key, but all I can find are... When we walked into this room, a gate closed behind us, trapping us in and Wilhelm out. He's sad about it. Thankfully, when we defeat our enemies, the gate rises. When we get to the top of this stairway, we find a boneful mural with something sticking out of it.
A key. A key in the form of a finger bone.
Oh, ooh, I bet I know where that goes. Not here, because that's Mercurio's door, and we don't have Mercurio's permission now, do we? No, it goes to Garanol's door, and whoa, dude! What are you doing in here? You ain't Garanol? They call him Garanol because he's carrying all the pussy. I don't know what I'm saying. There are a few enemies in here, including the dreaded barrels. Oh god, they're fighting back! Get away, Rohub, run! Oh god, no! Oh boy, that's a while ago. Oh boy, it's at the beginning. Oh boy! Having gained new respect for other cultures, we finally make it to Garanol's study, where we of course read his diary.
My newest child, Mercurio, hath proved a tainted blessing. Though he is ambitious and untrustworthy, he has added much to the protection of this house. He drinks the power of death with an unquenchable thirst, and could become the greatest student of the grave, but he hath little respect for our ancient alliances with the other Canaanites, and could reawaken old feuds. The ungrateful puppy even seeks to seal his crypt from me. Does he not know that I can crack his sealed crypt at any time with my anointed skull of the Lamia? Alas, but I do require Mercurio's aid until such time as I can fathom the secrets of the golem and gain its protection. I would that I had the lore of Rabbi Mordecai ben Judah to aid my experiments, but as I lack the wisdom of the Kabbalists, I would deal with the devil himself in these parlous times.
If Mercurio is charged with the protection of this haven, I wonder that we have not yet faced him.
I would have words with this Mercurio. Venerable Garanal should not have to rely upon an untrustworthy child.
There's also some woobies in the skull the journal talked about.
What beast once wore this skull upon its neck?
Well, Kristoff, the Lamia were a vampire bloodline closely linked with the Cappadocians. Primarily made of embraced women, the Lamia claimed to be descendants of Lilith, who in Vampire is said to be the first wife of Adam and the actual first woman created by God. Yeah, there's a lot here that I don't really have time to get into, but basically the Lamia acted as the muscle of the Cappadocians as they had ready access to the Potence discipline. They were very few in number, as their bite could infect humans they fed upon with a plague-like disease. You don't want to go killing your food source like that. Now, why does Garanal have a quote-unquote anointed Lamia skull, and how can it unlock doors? I don't fucking know. If anyone out there knows something in lore about Lamia skulls and their unlocking powers, let me know. For now, let's go see Mercurio.
What? How comes thou here? Flee now, and the great Mercurio will not smite thee.
So, hiding like a rat in a hole, whilst thy kin fight valiantly in defense of thy theft. Thou art a clotpole of a coward.
I hide not. My work is too important. Work thou hast interrupted. I shall crack open the tree of life and uncover all the secrets of death and life.
Canst thou restore mortal life to a vampire?
Soon, very soon, I shall have such secrets. Smite thy Bruja ally, and thou shalt be the first to be restored when the secrets of death are mine.
Nay, thou art false. Give us the nod fragment, or my blade shall teach thee the secrets of death.
Nay, thou wilt tell Garanal of my theft. 'Tis better I bury thee in a secret grave, with stakes of oak piercing thy hearts, and a wraithworm shall hollow out thy noble brows and robust cheeks.
Mercurio is a bastard. I take him down pretty easily here, but on my first playthrough, I about lost my shit trying to take him down. You see, he summons ghosts that attack you, which is a problem, but okay, we can handle that. However, they have a chance to daze, fear, I don't know. They can make our characters just walk back and forth doing nothing, which just lets Mercurio kill us. Thankfully, we got lucky here and we bone him hard. He drops a fragment from the Book of Nod.
The signs of Gehenna, Canto 4. So too, our grandsires will rise from the ground. They will break their fast on the first part of us. They will consume us whole.
What means this dire portent?
This is a great secret, known to a few wise vampires. The Book of Nod tells us that the 13 ancient founders of the vampire clans will one day rise from their age-old sleep. When these antediluvians emerge from torpor, they shall fall upon us, their descendants, and gorge their unholy thirst upon our blood. The day they rise is called Gehenna, or the Winnowing, and it signals the end of all that is. We know not how to prevent it, but even now Ekaterina searches for a way.
Why didst thou not tell me of this? With such evil barking at our heels, we must hasten our work.
Forgive us. Most young Cainites are not ready to hear it. They mistrust their sire, and that we cannot have.
Mercurio apparently likes to keep his evil schemes out in the open in a big-ass book, so we read that too.
The Riki, that fouling old Potok, fears that I seek to betray him. But he shall not know with a certainty until the last of his sludge blood oozes from his pus-ridden corpse. The old maggot pie needeth my power in defense of his withered haven, and shall overlook my indiscretions. So I must keep his mewling household in a frenzy, defending themselves from aggrieved villains. I shall steal from the beslubbering Bruja to draw their wrath upon him. However, should his crusty majesty plumb the secrets of the golem, he shall need me no longer. So, I shall pollute the rabbi's gall-faced golem with grave rot, making it useless to him. Then shall I drink the old leper's blood before the moon hath fully waned.
Fully waned!
Garanal's search for wisdom has not trespassed into our haven. 'Twas his false servant Mercurio. We were fortunate to find the fragment before another clan could learn of it. Others might not have spared Garanal in the search.
In the big chest, we find some unidentified leather armor. With that, we head all the way back up through the monastery. Catching a snack before we head out, of course.
We must hurry. Dawn approaches.
Okay, so Wilhelm decided to go eat a monk during this dialogue. I don't know why he's able to do that, but he did. So just imagine he's here.
The sun is a destroyer now, Christoph. Remember this. During the day, thou must find a place to rest where no sunlight can enter. Let us return to the university, where Katerina shall surely celebrate our triumph.
I cannot share thy pleasure over such a deed.
Come now. Before thy embrace, did thou not slay evil creatures? Behold, thy mission survives even thy death.
That is scant solace for the loss of my soul.
Thou dost brood too much upon events thou cannot change, Christoph. Seek consolation in our Promethean mission. Bury thy woe in the blood-drenched soil of battle. I have found that the fury of war weaves enchantments that soothe even the most troubled heart, kindred and kind alike.
I well know the seduction of warfare.
Then thou knowest the joy of cutting a bloody swath through thy foeman.
The only joy I felt was in doing the work of heaven as a soldier of God. I have done nothing to warrant this fallen state. How can God allow men to become demons? How can God snatch away the promise of salvation?
God allows the innocent child on the battlefield to cry and does nothing. So why should God prevent the misery of a killer like unto thee?
I do not know. I have not considered these things.
Come, I promise thee a trip to the convent, but make haste. Dawn comes quickly.
Christoph? My love?
Thou art accursed, if Christoph be thy love.
Nay, do not go, my lord. Let me look upon thee. Good my lord, forgive me. I was filled with fright to behold thee. Thy comely face is now sicklied over with a pale cast, and I scarcely recognized thee. Forgive me. Thou hast been gone so long, we feared for thy life.
Thou feared aright, for I am dead to the world, and my soul is lost.
Do I behold a ghost? Nay, I touch thy arm, and I know thou art flesh and blood.
Not flesh, only blood.
My lord, thy words do fill my heart with fear, and I tremble. Good my lord, why dost thou look so strangely upon me?
My mind is filled with thoughts of such base villainy. My hunger for thee is stronger now than when my heart did pump its own warm blood.
I know not what misfortune weighs so heavily upon thy soul, or has driven the rosy warmth from thy cheek, but the heavenly powers can banish all such darkness.
Should they banish this darkness, they would banish all that is left of me.
Say not so. My lord, I know thy heart, and thy soul is pure.
My heart, my soul. Thy words torment me with remembrance of all that I have lost. I was a fool to have come here. I must never return to a house of God.
Nay, I pray thee stay. My honored lord, thy soul is in peril.
My honored lady, my soul is lost. My cause is doomed. and I am damned. I go. I will not look upon thee again.
Then I pray thee, my lord, receive this token of me. 'Tis but a small amulet of St. Jude. Thou didst give it me, and it hath soothed the pangs of mine own heart that began when first I beheld thee, and a desperate, hopeless love did grow in my breast. Mayhap it will be some consolation to thy doomed cause.
Art thou deaf, woman? My cause is lost!
Therefore do I offer thee the amulet of Jude, patron saint of lost causes.
Oh.
Now, sweet heavens, guide him.